Hello, everyone. My name's Eric Thutt. I'm the Executive Director of Netroots Nation and want to thank you all for coming to this webinar. This is the start of Netroots Nation 2024 content. For those of you who aren't familiar with our convention, Netroots Nation is the oldest progressive political convention in the country. We're in our 18th year, and this year we will be live in July in Baltimore, the 11th through the 13th. If you're interested, finding out more about us or our convention, you can go to netrootsnation.org. I'll also be putting some information in chat for you all. But I'm going to turn it over to the people you came to here to see, the content creators, to get you started. If you have questions, please use the Q&A section of Zoom. And if you want to chat among yourselves, please use the chat function. And to that, Ashwath, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashwath. I'm one of the co-founders at Social Current. We help nonprofits, impact orgs work with content creators like the folks on this Zoom more effectively. Today's session, we're going to focus a little bit about social media best practices, how you can work with content creators, and yeah, we'll get right into it. So I'm not going to introduce everyone because they are awesome and I want them to be able to share who they are. And so we'll pass the mic around the sort of Zoom room. And if everyone wants to say who they are, why you create content, and maybe talk a little bit about how you got into content creation. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Ariana.
Hi, everyone, and welcome in. I'm so excited to be on this panel with so many amazing people. My name is Ariana. I'm a content creator. My main platforms are TikTok and Instagram, but I'm also a Twitch streamer, and I just got partnered on YouTube, so we'll be ramping that up as well. I originally started content creating when both my mother and my father were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and it really exasperated the issues that our system has when it comes to, people who really need help, people who need the support. They're forgotten. And so this journey that I kind of embarked on with my parents was what really made me angry. And my social media platform was my way of distributing the information that I learned through their journey. So really happy to be here. I've been content creating for 2 years and I plan on continuing to content create. So thank you.
Lorenzo, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lorenzo. I'm non-binary and use they, them pronouns. My handle online is adesso.lorenzo, which means now Lorenzo in Italian. I make advocacy and social justice skits on YouTube primarily, as well as TikTok and Instagram. And I focus on progressive issues in my content, like reproductive rights, climate change, and uplifting the work of Democratic candidates, but I primarily focus on LGBTQ topics. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I got started as a content creator in 2019 when I was on the job market. I was supposed to become an Italian professor, and that journey was really stressful. And I was actually looking for a creative outlet to deal with the stress of the job market. And I also felt like that line of work didn't really touch on a lot of my skill sets and talents that I felt that I inherently had. So I started making some videos on TikTok, and I had one video do really well after like maybe a week of having TikTok, and it was a gender identity skit video. So that's how I kind of started my platforms. I felt like there was a really big gap at the time to talk about LGBTQ issues online, especially non-binary identity and pronoun use. So that's how I started. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited, and for the panelists here as well.
Pass it to George.
Yeah, hello, how y'all doing? My name is George Lee, aka Consciously. Don't forget the Lee. You can catch me at theconsciously.com. My motto is education is elevation. I feel like being kind of I guess a middle-aged millennial, I've always kind of posted content on social media and thought that, what I was talking about, had some merit. A week after 2 weeks after my daughter was born in 2017, I thought that I could take more value of my time and that I could give more access to the information that I only got access to when I got to college and did the all of the SAT, ACT admission stuff, and felt like that social media could be a good avenue or a good tool for me to share that information and make it where the people in my community didn't necessarily have to go through all the admissions process, and to be able to dictate my time to be a better father slash husband. That's kind of how I kind of got into it. I make content about power and domination insofar as identity, race, class, gender, ability, sexuality. And typically most of my analysis is from a very intersectional but pro-Black perspective. Yeah.
Amazing. And last but not least, Qasim.
Thanks for having me, guys. Privileged to be here. I guess I'm the oldest person here, so I'll take that as a badge of honor. I'm an immigrant. I'm a Muslim person of color. And when you're all three of those things, and a sophomore in college when 9/11 happens, you learn pretty quickly that you need to play a very active role in defining your narrative, your brand, who you are, what you believe, why you believe it. And so I think the first probably decade or so after 9/11, I spent that time finishing up my undergrad, getting in the workforce, going to law school, and really kind of refining, honing my skills, my research skills, my academic skills, my understanding of history. And then as social media began to pick up steam in the late aughts, early 2010s, is when I began to get more engaged in social media. And really it was to drive back against some of the misinformation, Islamophobia, racism, anti-immigrant rhetoric. And that's kind of expanded as social media has grown, as our world has changed. I don't think there's any point where I said I want to be an influencer or that I ever considered myself one. It pretty much organically happened, and I'm at a place now where I see the net positive of making sure we're present. A lot of my work focuses on economic, social, racial, climate justice, gender justice, and kind of defining these principles of humanity, of recognizing that we don't necessarily need to agree on our personal morals to agree on the humanity of one another, and in doing so trying to bring people from different faiths, backgrounds, ideologies together on these principles of humanity, and enjoying it a lot, getting to meet a lot of great people like the folks on this call right now, and looking forward to having this dialogue.
Amazing. Well, as folks can see, we've got a very incredible group of panelists here. And so I want to start sort of structure the conversation to have the first part be very tactical, and the second part be a little more strategy oriented, and then we'll have 10-15 minutes for a Q&A at the end so that we can address anything in the chat. So just to sort of kick us off, when you got started creating content, and this sort of addresses the question as well, what did you do? How did you start creating content from a very tactical perspective? Were there specific things you did to create content, or was it just sort of filming on your phone and going live? And whoever wants to take that first.
I'll jump in. I started the first platform I really started to create content on was Twitter. This was back in probably 2009-ish or so. It's now about 15 years. And obviously at that time, it was just text. There was I don't even think they had images on Twitter at the time. And my focus at that time was really more introspective, because I was in my early mid-20s at the time, and still trying to figure out, what do I believe? Why do I believe it? And so my approach then was really more, introspective, like who can I learn from? Who can I understand better from? And a lot of what I put out there was just a reflection of the research that I've been doing in law school, the law review articles I've been doing in law school. And I think that is probably the most valuable lesson I can provide, that before you put content out, before you take a position publicly, know what you believe and why you believe it internally. Be able to defend that, bring the receipts, and have a strong understanding of that. And you'll be surprised at how much you might change. I'll give you one really good example before I pass the mic on this one. I went into law school believing that the death penalty was a necessary part of a justice system, that certain people just commit horrific crimes, and that's why we just need the death penalty. After researching it and understanding it firsthand from legal scholars, I began to question that. And by the time I started posting about it, I am one of the staunchest opponents to the death penalty that you'll find out there, and I can provide all the research and evidence and facts to back it up. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken the time to really understand what I believe and why I believe it. And I think having done that, it's allowed me to do two things. One, it's allowed me to keep in the back of my mind that, hey, I might be wrong about something. So continue to do research and keep your mind open, because you can always improve. But then it also allows me that when I do speak on something, I can speak with conviction and with clarity, saying that my focus is getting to a place of truth, not boosting my ego. Because then even in that latter scenario, when I'm focused on truth, if a brother like Conscious Lee comes up to me and says, hey, but did you think about this? I force myself to say, okay, let me think about that. And if I do change my mind, I'm not doing so as a contradiction. I'm doing so in being consistent to my commitment to understanding, truth and reality. That's kind of a foundation that I've built, and something that's really helped me along the way.
Anyone else want to hop in on sort of how?
Yeah, I hop in. I ain't want both of the hims to, you know what I'm saying, be talking right after, you know what I mean, trying not to take up too much space, so I'll make it quick. I have a college policy debate background that gave me the ability to really mean what I say and say what I mean, and gave me the ability for some portable skills to be able to research and to be able to talk my shit when I want to. Because my debate career ended the way that it did, I think that it really lit a fire up under me that made it where I wanted to talk more about the issues that I was talking about in debate, as well as the things that I learned in school. So for me, I first started making content really primarily on Facebook, because that's where all of the people that I was messing with was on. And as a result, I think, being very insular with how I was trying to make the content, because I was only trying to appeal to people really in my hometown. You know what I'm saying, of Bryan, Texas, and felt that if I made good enough content while people in Bryan, Texas, that they would share the content, and eventually it would get into other localities of Facebook, because, Facebook is really like more localized communities, you feel me? It didn't work out that good. I feel like I was able to start getting my feet up under me, but it didn't work out. I had to figure out how to be comfortable behind the camera, and I had to figure out how to have that same tenacity, you feel me, and that same courage that I had in the college policy debate realm by having it on the internet. For me, specifically, when I started being less timid and scary about talking about LGBTQ issues uniquely, that's when I feel like I was able to really spread my wings. Because I did debate, I was forced to think about and talk about power and domination and a multiplicity of identities. But once I stopped really worrying about what the homies or what the people would say or think about my sexuality and gender, and I started really being, I feel like, an accomplice and an ally, that's how I really started like not giving a damn and started being like, it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I can jump off on that, just to transition with more on the LGBTQ side of things as well. So when I started making the content, originally, it was based on my own experiences as a genderqueer person, and trying to illustrate some of those weird encounters that I've had and present those in an online platform. But then when the pandemic hit, I had a really new sense of urgency and passion for queer youth. I'm here living in Ohio, and Ohio is a space that isn't necessarily safe. And we've had some legislation recently that's been hard for our LGBTQ youth here. So when the pandemic first hit, I was really thinking about all of these queer kids that are perhaps having to stay in homes with unsupportive families, and what their school life was and is now, their whole lives have been upended. And I had this inner dedication to want to just be online for them. So I would hold these lives for like the first month of the pandemic to just be there for those teens. And that also stems from my own childhood, from, not having had a supportive family, having lost my family through my coming out process. I felt a lot of empathy for these young people. And that was a big part of my personal journey. And in addition to, like, I guess, the tactical big plan as well, my partner and I actually now go to high schools and middle schools in Ohio, and we get to visit the LGBTQ teens and teachers and encourage them in person. So I've really found that to be a beautiful experience, to have both the online and the in-person interactions with them. So that's sort of my bigger mission in a lot of work that I do.
I'm just going to speak really quick. So For me personally, I have a background in journalism. I was an intern at NBC and other really big news stations, and I realized that I couldn't really tell stories the way that I wanted to. There was a very specific narrative that traditional media wanted to spread, and I just did not want to be a part of that, especially as a Muslim Middle Eastern girl who grew up during 9/11. And so I decided to really use social media as a platform to be able to tell the Middle Eastern story, but from the lens of someone that was born and raised in America. And so I feel like in doing that, like there were a lot of hurdles that I kind of had to go through because people are very uneducated when it comes to the Middle East in America, and I can't really blame them. They're not taught that much. So really, I would say my biggest piece of advice if you want to start content creation is to just do it. Just do it. Just go for it. We all sucked when we first started. I looked at my first videos and I died of cringe. It was so bad. I'm telling you, just do it. Just post the video. Do what really speaks to you, but just like Qasim said, like make sure you know what you're talking about because you don't want to get caught up in the deep end of an opinion that you don't want to have because you didn't do enough research on it. But at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of our perspectives are lost, especially perspectives like myself, like a Middle Eastern woman who's Muslim. And so I really took that and I used it in my advantage, and even though it was really cringy at first, it ended up working out. So I would just say, just definitely go for it. There's always going to be someone that's willing to hear what you have to say and is really excited to hear what you have to say because your perspective is not given.
You've all touched upon this a little bit, but especially on video, I think one of the things a lot of organizations struggle with is not feeling comfortable being on video. And you all said that at some point it was a process and it took time. When did it start feeling normal to be on video? And like, are you used to it now? Like how do you feel sort of seeing yourself on camera? Like how do you sort of navigate that process? And do you have tips for organizations that like are used to text-based content but may not have figured out how to transition to video content?
I feel like that's a huge hurdle actually from folks that I've talked to about why they haven't started yet or the anxieties around that. And I actually did feel a lot of anxiety at first. I was so camera shy. I really hated being on camera and I had to put like a little, I forced myself to do it, but I had to put a little sticker on the piece where like the camera is on the phone because when I was looking back at the footage, I would see my eyes looking in different places. And I knew for me, there were so many moments when I wanted to make direct eye contact with the audiences. And in order to do that, you have to look at a certain spot on the phone. And so that was like a tactic that I used to kind of slowly do that more. And I just think, at least in my experience, it really was just the process of doing it over and over and over and over and over again. You start to lose that sense of shyness. I think that's true with practice with many things in life as well. But there are still moments now where I'll watch a piece of footage and I'm like, oh, that was not great. That was not my best moment. And you refilm or you do something else. But I think it's important to have a little bit of humor in the process and be able to laugh at yourself too, and know that the work that you're doing is still important at the end of the day.
I always think about this Dr. Seuss quote where he says, "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." And when I think about, like, there's a question also about, if you're just starting out, what advice do you have? And I think this applies here as well. There's 8 billion people in the world, right? If you get 1/10 of 1% of those people to pay attention to you, that's 8 million people on social media, right? If you get 1/100th of 1%, that's 800,000 people on social media, right? And so I think what my point is, whatever your style is your style, and you don't need to be somebody else's style. The 4 people on this call all have very different styles, right? No one is wrong and no one is right. They're right in the sense that they're authentic to who we are. And that's the number one thing that people want to see whenever they tune into any kind of person talking about something they care about, is their authenticity. The way I speak is very different than the way that Ariana speaks and the way that Conscious Lee speaks or Lorenzo speaks. But that's the point, right? That we're trying to draw our audience based on who we are, not based on trying to be somebody else. And so when it comes to camera, I'll tell you, like, I have a very, I'm going to pick on Conscious Lee for a second. I've got a very different style than he does, but I love his style. Like, I love watching his videos because I love his transitions. I love the 1, 2, 3.5, bullet points. It's excellent the way he does it. I couldn't do that. And if I tried to do that, I would look like a fool. But the point is, I don't need to do that. I have my own authentic style that works for me. And so as you're trying to get comfortable on camera, don't try to be someone you're not. Just be your authentic and sincere self. And I think Ariana said it beautifully, just jump in. And it's like riding a bike. You're going to fall off a couple of times and you're going to feel cringy and silly and maybe even stupid. But I promise you, you are your own worst critic. And there are, of the 8 billion people, if you can attract 1% of them, you've got a huge platform. You're going to go really far.
Quick follow-up to that. How did you find your style? Did you try a bunch of different things? Like, how did you sort of come to your style and then know it was your style?
Is that for me, or I just honestly, this is going to be such a bad answer, but I think because I'm repeating it, but look, Ariana already gave the good answer. Just jump in. Like, it's really easy. It's like a pool. You just jump in and then you figure out, how to float properly. Like, I can't swim, and I had to be convinced that you float because I was scared to death I would sink in. And it turns out I actually do float, which is a good thing because I don't like to die. And so you just, your style is going to be by jumping in and trying it out, and you'll figure out certain things that make more sense for you. And the thing is, once you figure out your style, trying to reinvent yourself, unless there's a really compelling reason, and your life decisions more than anyone else, there's no need to try to reinvent yourself. If you go to your favorite restaurant for a meal, and you enjoy the meal every week, and then suddenly they change up the entire meal, you might stop going to that restaurant. And with content creators, the same thing. People follow you. Like, if tomorrow, if Conscious Lee started to use my style instead of his own, I'd be disappointed because I love his style, and that's what keeps me coming back. It's not just the content, it's the delivery. And I love the delivery, and I would actually be disappointed if he tried to be like me, because he's doing such a better job being like him, right? That Dr. Seuss quote.
Yeah, I correlate social media a lot to like hip hop, being a hip hop artist and being a college debater. When I used to be in college debate and I wasn't that good at it, I was trying to be and sound like what I thought a good debater should be or sound like. And then I realized that I got to become a Hall of Fame college debater when I started really just not giving a damn about that and just thinking about how can I move unapologetically in a way that is authentically me, but also how can I justify and or prove what my points that I'm trying to make. And I think that once I started thinking about that as a debater, as you know what I'm saying, and I start thinking about that as a content creator, it kind of correlated in there, as well as sometimes when people are trying to like MC, you think about, what you think a rapper should sound like and what you think the bar should sound like, instead of just expressing yourself from a more, genuine standpoint. Coming from the country, I always heard old folks say, whatever's in you gonna come out of you. So if you acting like an orange and you really an apple, when they squeeze, they don't see the juice you really made of. That's something that really stuck with me as a youngster. And I think that when I'm now in social media, it's like me trying to really embody who I am in a way that inspires somebody else to be who they are and be their authentic selves. That's kind of how I think about trying to reverberate or factually, you feel me, impact the audience. And then going back to the other question, I realized I ain't answered correctly when you was talking about being tactical. Because I was being very intentional about using social media as a way to be able to get messages out, as well as being able to dictate my time, I was able to recognize something that was very consistent with the cast of Wild 'N Out. You feel me? The Nick Cannon show. And what I recognized is that everybody on the Wild 'N Out show, they had a nice, sustainable Instagram following before the overnight migration from Facebook to Instagram happened. And because that happened, they were able to almost rise with the platform because literally there were millions of people that went overnight from Facebook to being on Instagram. When I first got on TikTok in 2019, I was already making a lot of content about racial literacy, about white supremacy, about anti-Blackness, about really anything and everything dealing with the political, social, economic independence of Black folks in America. And because in 2019, the summer I got on there, I already had about 1,000 videos that were circulating on the For You page by the time the overnight migration happened. And I already had about 250,000 followers. As a result of that happening, along with the pandemic and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and all these tragedies that happened, it made a lot of people in society have a hunger for wanting to know more about racial literacy and more about the Black experience. And because I had a sustained following on TikTok already, as well as over 1,000 videos on the For You page, it made it where I think I was able to rise with the app. But I was very strategic, you know what I'm saying, or very tactful, you know what I'm saying, how the question was asked about how I was thinking about what would happen for TikTok, because I believed it was that revolutionary in terms of that For You page and making it where it is always exposing me to a new audience and never making it where I gotta just be dictated to that. Which brings me to answering this question and I'm done, right? The way I was able to find my camera presence, or the way I was able to get comfortable behind the camera, is by not giving a damn who's on the other end and or thinking that who's on the other end was a stranger. Once I got outside of making content just for my community in terms of my hometown and knowing everybody know who I am, I'm good. I was this and I was this and I was this, everybody. Once I divorced myself from that idea and made it be about, this is going to be people's first introduction to seeing who Consciously George Lee is. And it's not about how they feel about me. It's about whether I can prove what I said was right or not, or prove them wrong. It allowed for me to really be able to really find my comfort behind the camera, because I no longer gave a damn about how I came off. You feel me? If I had a booger in my nose, if my hair was a little dry, if my hair wasn't done, if I needed edge up, I really stopped giving a damn and start being like, I'm a debater. Like now I'm focusing on my argument. Can I prove my argument? Can I impact my argument? Can I out debate you? Everything else became like, to me, excuse my French, bullshit. Like I ain't worried about none of that other stuff. This is what it is now. And that's how we got here.
I think we could all hear you talk, so you don't have to ever say not talk. If that makes sense. You touched upon this a little bit around TikTok and sort of writing that For You page wave. Do you still feel like the platform gives you the same opportunities it did? Or generally, how are you all thinking about what platforms to prioritize as we start to see the platforms try to compete with each other and merge with each other in terms of features?
You're on mute.
I was gonna let somebody else speak first because I was got done speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were speaking because you were moving with a lot of conviction. Okay. Yeah, it was giving a lot of conviction. I was like, okay, he's got something to say, but he's on mute. Yeah, I think as far as the For You page, it's gotten a lot trickier. When I started making content at first, there were no reposts, there were no ads. You would post something, it would go viral really quick. Now you're competing with ads, reposts. The For You page is saturated, super saturated. A lot of people want to be content creators. And so, also, TikTok is constantly in the limbo. Every year we're told that they're going to ban them. So yeah, and then Instagram just rolled out their new default setting where, they default you into less political content without you even knowing. And you have to literally go in, find it through multiple different, settings and switch it back. So it's getting harder, I'm not gonna lie about that, but I do think I feel like Ashwath, you asked advice for organizations that want to go from text to video content. And what I've found that's very helpful, and I'm going to tie it back into this, if you take what you talk about through text that does well on Twitter and you formulate it into a video, it actually translates really well. Like I've seen that with a lot of my own clients. When you write a tweet that does really good and people are engaging with it, I promise you, if you talk about it in front of a camera, it's going to do really well too. So it's really just about getting comfortable on the camera, knowing what you want to talk about, and don't do millennial pauses, like just take out all the pauses. No one likes that. But in general, you'll get the hang of it. You'll get the hang of it. And if you need an advisor, you can definitely contact a content creator and just say, hey, can you work on my team for 3 hours a week and just tell me what to do? And I'm sure a lot of content creators would be more than happy to help you out with that. When I first started TikToking, I would go on this app called Clubhouse. It's basically dead now, but it's like an audio app. And I would sit there for hours in a TikTok room and learn all of the advice that people had who are on TikTok about how to make a TikTok, right? And so if you just teach yourself, and another last point I want to make is the best ideas that I have come up with have been completely random. And when I say random, I mean like random. I'm literally driving on a road and I'm like, wait, that would be such a good idea. And then I do it and it goes viral. But so your mind is always working. You have to make sure you nourish yourself, you eat, go on daily walks. Walks really help, move the brain. And just write down all of your ideas, and I promise you one of those ideas will pop off. Like, it'll do really well. You just have to trust and believe in yourself, your organization, and your messaging that you will be able to do what you're setting out to do. And be patient too, because the algorithm is weird. It won't even pick up your content for the first month. So you have to keep making content, you have to be consistent, and then they will reward you for your consistency.
I think the consistency piece, especially as folks try to do video, I think is important, because I think a lot of people don't try long enough. And I think, being able to get used to it, be consistent, practice, I think can go a long way. I know there's a ton of questions in the chat, so we're going to get to them soon. I want to start talking a little bit about the sort of content creator working with organizations piece of all of this. And so I know some, if not all of you, are full-time content creators. And so can you talk about a little bit about like what that means, how you work with organizations, why you work with organizations, and whoever wants to take it first.
I could go ahead and get it started. So I became a full-time content creator maybe a year ago. Prior to that, I was balancing my time between working at Ohio State as a lecturer and also doing content creation. And honestly, I'll say that it's thanks to organizations like Social Current that I have been able to make this a full-time job and get paid for the work that I make. While there is some money that maybe comes in through AdSense revenue or like on the back end of things, for me being able to get paid a sum to be able to make a video for a cause that matters to me, that maybe I'm already making content on that anyways, feels so much in alignment with my mission and what I'm doing. And I also just think that this is a really particular time in history, sort of to bring it back to the conversation we just had of the concept of short form content. We're kind of continuing to make shorter and shorter content. And when TikTok really started to go off with these less than 60-second videos, that was just a big moment for other platforms like Instagram and YouTube to follow in suit and also create their own version of that, where we have YouTube Shorts and we have YouTube and Instagram Reels. And so I think from my mindset, it was really like a right time, right place situation where you jump on this trend and then you think to yourself, oh, I should start posting these on YouTube because YouTube will start making short videos in the next 6 months, and we can kind of roll or ride the wave, as George was saying earlier, to kind of grow with the platform as it grows. So that's something that I guess I wanted to share on that point.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up as well. How do we work with orgs and why? So just like Lorenzo said, companies like Social Current have really made that possible. But also it's the fact that a lot of nonprofits are starting to really wake up to the fact that social media can be useful for them. I think this idea of nonprofits using social media to get signatures, get funding, it was all very foreign. It was mostly just email marketing or calling maybe, or maybe like text marketing. But this new wave of nonprofits and organizations or coalitions realizing that, hey, we have a following that's very loyal and they trust us, and we worked really hard to build that. Having organizations really understand that and honor that and pay us to make content for them, and they see the return in clicks and donations and, you know, people just understanding their brand or understanding their nonprofit name recognition, that also really helps us as well, because we have a following that is desperate to help. Like, I can't tell you how many DMs I get on a daily basis of people saying, where do I donate money to? What petitions do I sign? How can I get involved? And it's like, when we do those collaborations, we give them what they want to do, which is help. And we also are able to fund our platforms as well and be able to, you know, put food on the table while we also do something we love and educate people as well.
Yeah, beautifully said by Lorenzo and Ariana. I would just add that for me, I will only work with organizations who have their brand figured out. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important asset that we bring to the table. I get constant pitches for, hey, we want you to promote, you know, XYZ. And it could be a cause that's important, but something completely misaligned with what, you know, my not even values, but what people, you know, trust me about. You know, saving the whales is an important initiative. Nobody goes to Qasim Rashid to talk about saving the whales. I mean, it's important, but I'm not the whale expert, right? That you're going to come to. And so if I talk about it, people are going to be like, okay, but why, right? And so you want to be very protective of that brand. And if you're an organization and you send me an email saying, hey, we're following you and we love what you're doing and we think you'd be perfect for X, and that X is something completely misaligned, then I know you're being dishonest, and I'm probably just not going to even respond to it as well. And so if you're an organization, make sure that you research the person, because even if you find, let's say I'm having a bad day and you reach out and say, sure, I'll do it, but it ends up being a complete bust because it's not aligned, it's going to hurt you as your organization as well. And then two, recognize that what we bring to the table is not the ability to put out an Instagram post. That's not what we bring to the table. What we bring to the table are the decades of curated, cultivated audiences who are following us because they care about that particular issue. That's ultimately what you're getting access to. And, you know, like Ariana said it, Lorenzo said it, we have to put food on the table as well. We've got families to feed and mortgages to pay as well. And so invest those resources in us, because when you do that, there's an ROI. You know, if the first time I talk about something that's aligned, it's responded to well. And then when I continue to talk about it, it builds, right? And this is a model we see. Why do we all know Flo, the progressive lady? She's been their spokesperson for 100 years, right? Why do we all know you know, the BMO spokesperson is Lamorne Morris, childhood buddy of mine actually, but it's because they understand the consistency and the equity. And so in this way, when you're trying to find these micro influencers, yeah, I may not be somebody who's got, you know, 100 million followers, but on that niche you're looking for, it's there. And being able to make that long-term investment once you've aligned values is going to be an ROI for us as the creators and for you as your organization as well.
I'm gonna throw some like quick stats out there. I think it was like 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 2 TikTok users gets their news on the app. 1 out of 3 members of Gen Z has bought a product based on an influencer recommendation in the last 3 months. Brands are spending $5 billion on influencer marketing, and so brands understand the value of investing in people with strong communities, and this isn't a new tactic. And then the final one, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation did a survey with about 50 social justice content creators, and a majority of them said they would create more social justice content if they were compensated for the work. Creator work, like any work, is real work and deserves to be compensated for. And so if you're thinking about sort of building out your social presence, if you're thinking about investing in content creators, I hope you will choose the 4 folks we have on this call. Feel free to reach out to them if you have sort of anything. But we're going to go into the audience Q&A since there's a number of questions. I think we've answered some of them, but one of them around platform. What do you all think of Medium as a platform? Do any of you use
Never
it?
heard of it.
I don't really use Medium.
It's a streaming network, I'm assuming.
It's like a blog slash writing based
It's
Sort
like
of.
it's kind of like a Substack, but not really.
Hmm.
ish. I think like it doesn't have as many built out newsletter features that Substack does, but it's a little similar.
Without knowing much about it, thinking about it as a text form, we've been trying to talk a little bit about how we can transform text to video. My thoughts would be to think of a platform or be prioritizing platforms that do have the visual. Like what Ashwath just said, with all of these statistics, the generations that are coming up are more and more visual learners as well. And I think there are a lot of visual learners out there, but I think that that's another important piece maybe to think about moving from text to video and how we might be able to prioritize or capitalize on that method.
Yeah, I think that if they got like a couple 100,000 people on Mediums, whatever it's called, I think that it's worthwhile to make content over there. But I'm on like Twitter or on Threads or even on Facebook, and I come across some text that I thought that was thought provoking, I definitely will screenshot it and read it and then say what it made me thought of, what it made me think of. So I think that if you have any type of text that gets some engagement to whatever you used to, don't necessarily have to have like 1 million retweets. It's like if you have 300 Twitter followers and you typically don't get retweets and you make a tweet that get 10 retweets, that's a damn good tweet. I would read that one on the green screen and then throw some more images with it, or you know what I'm saying, say what else come to mind within, you know what I'm saying, what's being said. I think that when you're making content, it's really important to recognize we're living in an attention economy and that all the real estate is based on attention. So when you make your content and you press post, you really got to compete with the crazy Trump video, with the fighting video, with the beautiful woman that's you know what I'm saying, lip syncing, with the big booty shaking video, with the Say the Turtle video. You got to compete with all this attention, you know what I'm saying? So if you don't really recognize that you happen to be edutaining or entertaining or engaging in some way, your feelings gonna be hurt a lot of times because you maybe put 2 or 3 hours in making a video for a very noble cause, but it was dry. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't really getting our attention. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you think about that For You page, or you think about Reels, or you think about Shorts, or whatever platform you on, you recognizing that you competing for the attention of the other person on the other side of that phone. So I feel like that's always, you know what I'm saying, mindful to do. And then going back to my hip hop metaphor, it's a lot of artists that I think is trash. I ain't gonna say no names, but I think they suck. I think that they quality, their content is trash. They concept what they talks about is trash. It's not worth nothing, but they got huge audiences. So just because I don't like their music, it don't mean they don't have an audience that likes their music. You feel me? Keep this in mind all the times when you telling other people. And then I usually lead with this, but I'm gonna say it right now. I think that if you want to be a content creator, if you can't accept that, you know, your biggest supporter is probably gonna be a stranger, and somebody that you know and love probably gonna be your biggest hater, it's gonna be hard for you to do this work because sometimes the people closest to you got the hardest seeing the vision.
The next question from the Q&A. How do you all deal with concerns about video slash audio of us online, opening us up to people creating deepfakes or using AI to recreate your voice, image? Have any of you thought about that? How are you sort of thinking about it?
I think as a woman, that's really like scary, you know? I am scared that maybe one day some weird AI video of me is gonna come out of someone that really hates me. But at the end of the day, I can't let that stop me. So, I mean, it's in the back of my mind, but you know, it is what it is. I can't do much about it.
Yeah, I've thought about it. I view what I do though metaphorically as being like a store owner. It's like shit. It's certain things that come from territory when you own, you know what I'm saying, a store, whether it's a corner store, convenience store, supermarket. It don't matter. Certain things that come with it. So for me, being in this more public setting, artificial intelligence is coming, and in many instances it's already here. So I think there are different ways that I'll be looking for, you know what I'm saying, technological, security to kind of embed into my standard procedure operations. But I kind of see it as being a part of the territory, you feel me? Like artificial intelligence is gonna be here. So deep faking and taking your voice and people doing this and taking your image and I think that it's a part of what's going on. So now I feel like it's just for me learning as much as I can about artificial intelligence and about data integrity and about, intellectual property and about all the legal implications around it, and trying to make sure I do my due diligence in being able to do it. So like my social media name, my slogans, I got them all trademarked. You know what I'm saying? I own them. So that's a part of how I try to figure out what's going on in this world. But it's really just, I'm worried, but it ain't gonna stop nothing. We out here.
The next couple questions around research. How are you researching the content you create, and how are you making sure that the content you create isn't misinformation? Do you have a specific process, tools you use? What recommendations do you have for other folks that might be looking at creating more news or political content?
Yeah, so I come from a journalism background, and there's a difference between news and what's actually trending and what people are talking about. Because you can talk about the news, but if it's not trending and people aren't talking about it, you're not going to get that engagement. And just like Consciously said, like it's an attention economy. People have to be talking about it, and people have to be engaged and care about it, you know? For example, what I've noticed is that content about Trump in video form doesn't do that great for me personally. You know what I mean? Content about Ukraine and Russia doesn't do well. You know, there's certain things that people really care about, and there's certain things that people don't necessarily really like engage with. So what I do is I go on Twitter and I see what people are talking about. What is on the trending list on Twitter? What are people on my feed talking about? Right? Like, what are people retweeting? What's the biggest story? For example, yesterday it was Nikki Haley signing bombs. That was the biggest story. That was what everyone was talking about. So sure enough, I took my phone, I made a video about that, and I tied it into the news that's also happening as well. In order to verify the news that you're talking about, I don't just go off of what I see on Twitter. If I see someone post, oh my God, Nikki Haley was signing bombs, for example, I will do a thorough Google search until I find a credible source where I'm like, okay, this happened. Or in my personal instance, I saw that an Israeli UN ambassador posted it onto his Twitter. And so that confirmed it for me. I was like, okay, if he's posting it, then that means it actually happened. And he was with this UN ambassador that is with Israel. So it's one of those things where it's like, you find the news, you find what people are talking about. My best source is Twitter. I highly recommend Twitter. It's just a great place to see what people are talking about. But also there's other apps like Newsbreak where you see the top trending 20 headlines of the day, right? And you really have to go through your own discretion, like, okay, what are people really going to be talking about? What's going to get people fired up? Because at the end of the day, you want to elicit emotion. Whatever you post, you have to make the viewer feel something. And some people really get lost in the sauce with this because they start just really anger baiting, right? The whole time they're just anger baiting, like, oh, you need to be angry about this. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it works, but at some point it's going to get old, right? Or, people are crying in the video. Sure, that's going to elicit emotion. You don't want to be the person that cries every single day on Instagram, though. So it's one of those things where it's like, you elicit emotion, but you see what the story is, you see what people are talking about, you see what the story is, you verify it, and then you write and or speak about it in a way where you can elicit emotion. And that is the formula that has never done me wrong, in my opinion.
I'll add two things to Ariana's really thoughtful comments. One is it's a curating process over time in being able to recognize information. And what I mean by that is think about a sport, for example, that you love watching. The first time you watch that sport with somebody who's never seen the sport before, they look at you like you're crazy because you're calling plays, you're seeing what somebody did wrong. To them, it looks like I remember the first time watching a basketball game with my wife after we got married. She's from the UK. She'd never seen basketball before. And I'm giving commentary on the NBA finals. And she's like, what are you talking about? This is a bunch of idiots throwing the ball around. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Here's what's happening. And I'm breaking it down for her. I'm able to see before she even knows what's going on because I've been watching the NBA for so long. And on these issues that you care about, when you're attuned, you can, like Lorenzo is going to pick up on issues impacting the LGBTQ community far before I ever will, because that's just not my focus, right? And that leads to the second point, that learn, and this is going to sound strange, but hear me out, stay in your lane. And what I mean by that is not that you should be isolated or insulated, but speak on issues that you have expertise from an experiential standpoint in, and otherwise elevate other people's content. I'll give you one really good example of that. Because I got, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, I was getting DMs, what's your opinion on this? And I said, I don't have an opinion on this. I'm gonna look at the Black content creators and worry about what they have to say. I don't have a space, I don't have a dog in this fight to be able to say what was right, what was wrong. I'm gonna learn from the people who have this lived experience. That is the way I've avoided getting canceled, so to speak, and avoided getting in trouble, but also ensured that my information is accurate and the stuff that I put out there is accurate. So everything Ariana said is great, but also remember that you got to play the long game. Read the scholars, right? If I'm talking about the prison industrial complex, then I need to read Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow and understand the role that the prison industrial complex plays today, tied to Jim Crow in the history of all these things. If I want to talk about the racial injustice within our public policy, I might read Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzer. And if I want to understand the role that slave patrols played in policing, I'm going to read Stamped from the Beginning and Ibram Kendi, right? And so there's different scholars that talk about these things and learn from them, and that'll allow you to fine-tune your skills so that when something breaking does happen, like what Ariana talked about, you have the context, you have the history, you know your lane, and now it's a matter of vetting the final details before you can put out content. And that point you made about the horrific comments Nikki Haley made, I put out a video yesterday. I'm like, she's South Asian, I'm South Asian. Let me talk about this from a South Asian perspective. And it got over 100,000 views in the first 12 hours. I mean, that is because of the combination of all those things coming together.
Yeah, and just to go in more on it, listen, stay in your lane, because you can get yourself ran over or get somebody else ran over, not only metaphorically, but actually literally. When you jump in social media and you start talking about things you don't know, there's already a culture war going on, and social media content creators, influencers, whatever the hell you want to call us, our bodies are already on the line when it comes to this culture war that's going on. So when you press post and you make information, and you press post and you make an analysis, and that analysis is unethical, immoral, or full of misinformation, it makes it where individuals, us folk on this platform right here, we got to be the ones that deal with the forefront of how within content creation people say X, Y, and Z. We have to be the ones that do that. That's how you get us ran over. Then for yourself, when it happens, is it makes it where you get caught up in the backlash. Now you getting doxxed. Now you getting counseled. Now your employment is being came for. So you really want to make sure before you press post, you can say what you mean and mean what you say, and you can defend it. You know what I'm saying? And when you click that post, it's like you have the energy to defend it. You feel me? So just really making sure you recognize that. And then for me, because I come from a policy debate background, being able to back up your claim with a warrant and an impact, it's kind of how my brain is set up. And then it's kind of echoing some things that I'm saying. Kasam said is that when you go look at scholarly journals, scholarly articles, they already have the research within the research. So for me, general rule of thumb, I know that my whatever I'm reading is good if they have a great little bibliography, you feel me, or a great little reference, a little footnotes, some other thing they referencing, so I can go and look at that as well. And I can't believe right now they said bibliography, but damn it, I said it. You know what I'm saying? It's real important. Sometimes when I'm being lazy, maybe I just look for like I read an article or two. But if I'm really trying to get in my bag, I'm going to the like Google Scholar, EBSCOhost. I'm going to the scholarly websites, databases, and I'm looking for them. And then I'm typing in different keywords, because now I'm trying to formulate an actual debate argument. And for me, I want to control uniqueness in my argument. I want to make it where my argument is so fresh and so good that whoever gonna respond to it, they gotta respond to what I said and not whatever Fox News told them or whatever their uncle told them. You know what I'm saying?
I also, just really quick, I put a book in the chat. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read this book before I started content creating, and it's very old. It's from the 1920s or something like that, but the points made in it are very like useful because it just teaches you how human interaction works and how you can really use your skill set to influence people. And you just got to do the work to translate it into today's world, but it'll help a lot.
Awesome. I'm dropping folks' handles in the chat so that you can make sure to follow them. We have 4 minutes left, so I want to give everyone a minute to sort of close out and like give any final recommendations on what organizations should be doing to get on social or work with content creators like yourself, or any tips, best practices, things you want to leave folks with.
I'll try to be quick. I seen somebody in the comments ask the question about if you're in an organization that doesn't have a social media following or working with content creators, benefit and help. It has in the past. I usually work with a lot of organizations that are just starting, and we usually create some type of long-term relationship that allow for their brand to become much more familiar with my audience. So it's not really a one-off, but more like a little partnership. I've been able to work with Social Current for about 3 years, 4 years. How long we about to say? I'm working with them for a few years, and I think that it's been able to make it where when my followers see their logo or see X, Y, and Z, they're already familiar with what the organization is. And then the last thing I'll say is it's about really recognizing that there's an ecosystem in social media and that there's not just like one app. I feel like when we used to watch cable TV, we acknowledged that there were different personalities and different social economic backgrounds that attracted to certain different channels. And I think that social media and the different channels that we have in terms of like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Threads, to me, like all those could be seen as like different channels, and acknowledge that I try to be very intentional in making where if I make a video on TikTok, all them platforms finna see this video. But I recognize that, some people that follow me on TikTok, they don't follow me on Twitter. You follow me on Twitter, you might follow me on YouTube too, but you don't follow me over there. So it's like kind of being able to create like a Venn diagram within the content where sometimes there's overlap, but sometimes I might make a post that's just stayed on TikTok, a post that just stayed on Instagram, a post that just stayed on Facebook, but try to make it where they overlap. You know what I'm saying? So the biggest thing I want to take from this is that first thing, working with content creators to start a social media following or start social media visibility, great way to start. Second thing is you really want to be intentional on cultivating an audience on all the platforms, because there's millions and billions of people on literally all of them. And some of them might not like the other, or like these two, and I like those two. And it's just, how it is.
Yeah, building off on that, I do want to say, I think Lee, you said it really consciously, you said it really well, but also, one time I had a mentor tell me that social media is like a wheel, and you don't want to drive a car that has triangle wheels, right? Like you want to hit every single social media site that you can. And so right now, short form content is best for YouTube, Instagram, as well as TikTok. And then if you want to do honestly, I would say if you can make short form video content, you can really post it everywhere. And I would say that would be the best way to start, in my personal opinion, because they're all prioritizing short form video. That's just a fact. It's the age we're in now. It might change at some point, but right now, short form video is where you want to be at. If you would like to work with me, you can definitely send an email. Just like Consciously said, I just want to kind of bounce off on that. There's a lot of organizations that do ambassador programs with social content creators, and I know that Oshroth has worked on some of these ambassador programs as well, where you bring on a couple of influencers and you have them make a video for you once or twice a month, and then they really expand their following into your organization and really help elevate your goals. But just like Qasim said, influencers that are aligned with your vision as well. And the best way you can get into contact with me is through my email, but I'm also sending my Instagram in the chat right now so you guys can see. But this was so wonderful. I had a lot of fun. But yeah, my last point is just like Nike, just do it. If you want to post content, just freaking do it. I promise you, you're going to get so many opportunities if you post video content. You're going to get so many opportunities. It's really insane how many doors social media has opened for me that I did not ever think would open for me ever. And that's really just through, the power of using what's in front of you and learning how to tape videos, learning how to edit the basics, and then posting and making sure that you are aligned with what you're saying. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Lorenzo and Kasim, any closing words? And just for everyone, we'll send a follow-up with everyone's details so that you can reach out. And yeah, Lorenzo, Kasim.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I really see this moment as being really special to consider it from a grassroots perspective, where we're finally in this period where there are so many online influencers that can be doing this work and have the platforms and leverage to be making this content. And I just think that if we can all collectively be working together, even though we have, or maybe because, and even though we have all of these different audiences and all of these different styles or approaches to the work that we make, we can collectively really make change happen from all of these different points of view. So I'm going to be doing that this year, and I know that these panelists are going to be doing that this year, and I encourage all of you as well. It's been great to be here and to be a part of this conversation today. So thank you for having me.
And I'll very well said, Lorenzo. I'll echo everything you just said. And just my 30-second remarks are, we're at a really unique time in history where trust in legacy media is at historic lows. I think I read a Gallup poll that less than 30% or 32% of Americans support legacy media. Trust in government, Congress has an 11% approval rating because I think we all agree they're just not doing what they need to be doing. And the trust in these personal relationships is at an all-time high. And that's, love it or hate it, that's what social media allows. It allows people to have a very curated experience to what they want and what they want to see. And so doing the legwork up front for those organizations, especially those who are starting up or who may not have a large budget of the tens of millions of dollars or even of the millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, building those relationships now and recognizing that this is not a short-term get-rich-quick scheme for any of us. This is a long-term partnership. There are certain organizations that I do charge more for because I know they're established organizations, but I can tell you there are other organizations that I charge very little because I believe in their value and I'm committed to the long-term investment with them. So there's no one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach. Have the conversations. And I'll tell you, there are organizations that have reached out to me that I'm like, I love what you do, but it's just I'm not the right person. Let me send you to this person who I think would be a much better fit. And it's worked out that way as well. We look out for each other too, because we recognize that we need to look out for each other. So if you're not sure, have the conversation. The worst that's going to happen is you'll find referrals to new people. And, I want to give out a shout out to Ashwath and his entire team. I've been working with them for several years, and they are what is right with this industry. And if you're connected with him and his team, you're definitely on the right track. And I look forward to the opportunity to connecting with each of you going forward.
I promise I did not set that all up.
You did not. You did not. That was all organic. But
I want to thank all of you panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time. For everyone in the audience, you should be working with every single one of these content creators. If you haven't reached out already, you should. And we will see you all in Baltimore. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening.
Bye, guys.